All right, so just to start out, tell me your name and your role in this whole. You can give your title if you like to.
I'll give all my titles.
Right.
So, my name's Bob Baer, and I work at Southern Illinois University Carbondale. I do research. I do solar research, concentrating on the eclipse most recently, and citizen science. And so for this project, for the Simons Foundation project, Passing Through Shadow here at ArtSpace 304, I was contacted a while back by Chuck Benya, asking if I'd be interested to serve as a science advisor on this project, which I was actually really excited to do, because I love art and I love that blending of art and science. And I think we've lost that a little bit over like the last 20 years that I've been in education, where things have turned a little more technical and like the science seemed to go away from the art. And I've seen that start to come back over the last, I'd say the last few years. And so I was really interested to be part of this project from the start of it, from when I first heard about it, and super excited, of course, once we got notice that we had the initial funding and then the full funding for the project.
Why do you think art and science are important to be working together? Why do you see that as important?
So I got into physics because physics is a study of nature, of our natural world. And it gets pretty complex with math. Turns a lot of people off from it, actually, from getting into that as a field. But in nature, some of the most beautiful things are like astrophotography images, or even just how plants grow and how the leaves shape and how everything, how nature looks, the appreciation of it. And that is definitely art, it's definitely science, and the two together, once you start to understand both pieces, you can see how those mesh together. And that's just how I've always seen it.
And what did you learn from the art aspect of this exhibition?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I gotta think about this before I answer. There's several pieces. So there's there's several pieces. There's a cultural aspect. There's been a lot of discussion and a lot of movement over the last decade, I'd say, about moving towards underserved audiences in art and science. And Native Americans is a very large underserved audience. Sometimes we think of underserved audiences, small audiences, but that's a big group. And so the cultural significance that Antonio pulled into each piece of this, I thought, was actually really important. And I learned some about that. But then just the imagery, the different types of imagery that he picked up and pulled into the exhibit, I thought was really interesting. And just how other people see things, and the symbolism that he brought into all the pieces by like bringing in the shadow bands as part of the actual structure, not just, a 2D painting, but part of the 3D structure of the exhibit. And then how he was able to pull in some of what is the data collection, which seems quite boring, right? The data collection that I do when I take images, it's actually taking HDR images, which are different exposures, which are represented in the slices that he has of the different images of the eclipse, going from short exposure to long exposure. And just seeing that all come together is, I don't know, it's just really special for me to be able to see that.
And then
did I answer that question? Okay.
And working with Antonio, how did you actually help? Did you help construct some of this stuff as well? Like what?
Mm-hmm.
Like even in the process,
Yes.
there's art and science to just get this built properly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So as we were talking about doing some of this and seeing how big some of these pieces were, I did get involved in the actual building of what I just call the support structures to hold some of this stuff, and the alcoves that some of the things went into, but the roll-around structures that we see that hold the LEDs that are recessed back into the structures and hold the 4x8 foot Corian panels. Those are ones that I built on site here. And that was you know, a lot of fun for me. I enjoy woodworking, I enjoy building things. And so to be able to contribute to the project in that way was really fulfilling for me, actually.
And you're involved in so many grant projects along this whole path of the eclipse, the totality. And then tell me a little bit about the grant you got for this with the Simons, and do mention their name. Simons.
Okay. Yeah, so the Simons Foundation grant for this, this was a $100,000 gift, actually, which is different than a lot of the grants that I get that require very specific reporting and meeting exact goals. This was more of, what's your idea? What do you want to do? Now implement it. And there was a lot of, how do I want to say it? We were given a lot of leeway, I think that's the word for it, to do what we'd like with this project. And so that allowed Antonio to just pursue it how he wanted to pursue it, and not worry about exact constraints that might be put on it by like a funding agency. That's different from the grants that I do at the university, which are, they have to fit into sometimes a pretty narrow bounds of what you're going to do, whether it's education, engagement, or research. And oftentimes you can't combine those. And so this project's really interesting to me because the Simons Foundation allowed us to just pull all that together and do what we'd like with it to engage the public. So it's, in some ways, this is a little bit of science communication going on, but through an artistic format, not just talking about it.
Excellent. And now that the eclipse is just about upon us and soon will be past, like why should this remain important to understand and appreciate the art and science of it after it's not going to happen for a long time again?
Yeah, we're not going to see a total solar eclipse in Carbondale for, oh gosh, I don't have the date memorized, but we're talking well over 100 years, I believe. So not our generation, we won't see this again. But this has been really special for the area in terms of what I saw was the unifying aspect of this. So working on the campus, where for 2017 we had just under 600 volunteers helping on the eclipse, and a broad representation of campus involved in the planning and the events and the research. I hadn't seen that type of cooperation before on campus. And so the unifying aspect of the eclipse is real. That actually happens. It's a very positive event, but specifically, why would I like to see this stay here in Southern Illinois and in Carbondale? These have, what Antonio's done with the exhibit is to have specific Native American components that are tied to this area directly, the Kaskaskia and the Shawnee tribes. And so I think that's really important to the history of this area, to keep that tied here, as well as this art was born here. So it, in my opinion, it should have a home here, it should stay here. And it's, it looks towards the future. We do have more eclipses coming up around the world. People can learn something from this exhibit, like what to look for if they want to go see another eclipse somewhere. And they don't have to wait. We don't have to wait for one to come specifically here. There will be other ones in the United States, but around the world, every 18 months roughly, people can see one. And I should add something. And of course, it's not just about eclipses. So when we look at this, exhibit, it's a little bit about how cultures saw eclipses, astronomy, the sky. So eclipses are the most spectacular thing in general that people can witness. But what I've done with research, and what I hope this art does as well, is make people aware of those cultural ties to space, to our solar system. And again, that is very uniting, the astronomy aspect of it, the eclipse aspect of it. And I've seen these eclipses in Carbondale as just kind of a kicking off point to do something new, or to keep that spirit going beyond this eclipse.
Great. And then what is, I mean, it's kind of, have you thought about, well, I'm sure you've thought about it, so could you say anything about the fact that this path of totality has crisscrossed us, this will be twice in basically the exact same spot. So is there any additional like revelations that have come up because of this convergence?
Yeah, give me a second, I'm gonna take a sip of water.
Sure.
Okay, so for me, when I first saw that map that showed the X over southern Illinois, and specifically the center lines of the path of totality intersecting right over Carbondale, that just blew me away, because I wasn't looking that far forward at the time. I wasn't looking 3 years forward, 10 years forward. I was looking forward to the next year when I was planning out public astronomy observations. And so seeing that and seeing those opportunities to do the research associated with those eclipses, first of all, that was really exciting. But the engagement, the community events, that's a big part of our mission at SIU. You know, we're an educational institution, we do research, but community service is, those are the three things that the university exists to do. And the astronomy outreach, the eclipse outreach, that's a huge community service. So the opportunity to do that in a big way, that blew me away. And things like this might not exist if it hadn't been for those opportunities. Now the fact that we see two, oh my gosh, that just got people in the area, in this region, so excited. And again, you know, I push for people, just go for it. If there's something you've always wanted to do related to space or art or the eclipse, now's the time. You're not going to get another chance, you know, at least not beyond 2024, to do something this big and have this kind of worldwide impact that we've had. The media coverage has been phenomenal on this. I never expected to be in the New York Times and the Washington Post. And the really cool thing about this is it's not just me doing those interviews, it's a lot of people doing those interviews now, and a lot of exposure for the whole area. Things have completely changed from when this started, for me in 2014, when I talked to people about the eclipse and their eyes would gloss over and they'd be like, you know, it's 2.5 minutes or whatever, it's 4 minutes of darkness, what's the big deal? Things have changed a lot, and so I was hopeful then when I first saw that map that we'd get a lot of exposure and a lot of interest and a lot of people wanting to do things, and I've definitely seen that, and I said I hope to carry that spirit forward.
I think I just have one more.
I might have got lost in that question too. So.
Well, is there any cosmic connection around this? Any or scientific significance that maybe you're hoping to find when you record?
Oh.
The fact that it comes twice on that spot, like.
So, not really.
No.
Not really. I think people have tried to define some cultural significance to it. For us, the biggest thing was the opportunity. So these eclipses allowed me to do things like the DEB initiative most recently, that I'm co-leading with Matt Penn, and previously the Citizen Kate experiment that Matt Penn led. That's when I got involved with this type of research. And that allowed us to put these volunteer telescope teams all along the eclipse path, all throughout the nation now with the DEB initiative. And so we're creating this baseline of scientific data that's used going forward, actually. So anyone doing eclipse observations in 17 and 2024 can use the imagery that we get as a baseline for the data that they get. And that forms a data set going forward, like I said, and helps us hopefully someday to understand the sun a little bit better. We're contributing small pieces towards much larger research goals, like maybe being able to predict solar flares or understand our sun better, learn things that we don't even know that we can learn from this basic science. So there's that piece of it. There's also, in working with a lot of people across campus, I had no idea how many people shared common goals, like, can we have a science center on campus? Can we have a permanent planetarium? How can we integrate art into things like that? So I've been really surprised, in a good way, working with STEM Education Research Center on campus and other groups, and hopeful that we'll continue to pull people together and do collaborative efforts and come up with some great things at SIU in the future and in the community as well.
Great. And let me just maybe conclude with like your experience of the combination of the working with the Simons Foundation and ArtSpace 304, both entities basically outside your normal university. So if you could just sort of concisely say like perhaps something about the generosity and the freedom you had, plus the interactions you've had here. Yeah,
of course. So yeah, I had not been to ArtSpace before this project. My work at the university keeps me in, you know, before the eclipse, it kept me in one building, basically. So going out and working with other people collaboratively was something I didn't do a whole lot before I got involved in eclipse research. And then it blew up big time. The Simons Foundation definitely gave us freedom that we didn't have before to explore some of these things that we had really wanted to do that just didn't fit into the standard grants, the standard research or engagement grants even that we'd go after on campus. And so I'm very thankful for that. And being able to work here at ArtSpace and put something up that is really special, is really unique, again, that we might not have, actually we don't have that format on campus to be able to do something like this. One thing that we did do a little earlier on in the project was a retreat that the Simons Foundation sponsored in New York State for us. And that was really special to me because I had not worked with artists since I was an undergrad. So that kind of took me back to what it was like to be a student, like an undergrad, and working with artists, working with people in different fields. And that took things up to a different level, that creativity, you know, that students have. And to bring that back in at this point in my career was really awesome. And so that was something, again, unique that I wasn't expecting to come out of that retreat that was incredibly valuable to me.
Great. Is there anything else you'd like to add that I haven't covered?
I'm just thankful for the opportunity to work on this and hopeful that we can do more things like this in the future. And when I say like this, I mean in the spirit of this. New things, you know, because this is exactly what is meant when people say combining of the arts and sciences. It's not just, we're going to put arts over here and we're going to put science over here. It's like, nope, let's bring that together.
That was awesome. Perfect, Steve.
Cool.